Hey guys, what's up? I hope so you're doing good and you're happy and you're motivated to learn Prisma today. By the way, if you don't know what Prisma is actually an ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping, and it is actually this can help you to like use MySQL or any other database without even knowing the SQL, like the language which is used to talk to a database, which is which is SQL, right? Or like you can use MongoDB as well, but today in this tutorial we'll be going with MySQL as a database, and we'll try to set it up with Express. By the way, it is not a compulsory that you set it up with Express. You can use it with whatever you want, and we'll be going with basics of this. So let's get started. Let's learn what is this, how this works, and basically everything about it. So first thing what you have to do is we'll be setting up a Express project to use this, right? So yeah, let's very quickly do that. So we'll use Express generator TypeScript, right? And you can see Express generator TypeScript. This is a package, right? We don't want this. Okay, so let's initiate a project. First of all, what I'll do is I'll launch my terminal up. So this is my terminal. I hope so this is visible, right? So what we'll do is we'll go to desktop and we'll make a new folder, and we'll call it Learn Prisma, right? We'll go inside this, not this, inside Learn Prisma folder, right? We are inside now the Learn Prisma folder. Now what's next will be, we are using yarn over here. You can use npm or whatever, pnpm, whatever package manager, whatever node package manager you are comfortable with. So I'll be using yarn over here. I'll say yarn init/y, which will instantiate empty node repository over here, right? Next thing what we'll be doing is I'll just go through very quickly this Express.js setting up part. So I'll just install some of the packages. So I'll install yarn add express. Of course, what else can we add? That's pretty much it, I think, for now, right? And we'll be that's pretty much it, right? So we'll be adding express and cause, and then we'll add yarn TypeScript, right? TypeScript. Now all these will be a development dependency. So we'll say yarn add/d TypeScript and nodemon, right? That is also something which we will be needing, and then there will be also needing maybe TS node, right? So we'll install all these different things just in order to enable us to run our project. So once we are done with that, what we'll do is we'll open this up in Visual Studio Code, right? So just give me a second. This is Visual Studio Code, right? I'll just make it a little bit bigger so that it's comfortable to see, right? So what we'll do over here is we'll be first of all creating a folder, and we'll call it src, which is a source directory, right? Inside the src we'll be creating an index.ts file, right? Now the next thing we'll be doing is I'll be very quickly writing an Express application. I hope that you already know how an Express application is written. I'll be definitely going with the basics of that, but I assume you are watching a Prisma tutorial, so you already know how that works, right? So what we'll do is we'll go for express from express, right? Then we'll be importing cors from cors, and then what we'll do is we'll say app is equal to express, right? And then what we can do is you can just of course if you're using TypeScript, you can say application over here. I think I didn't install the type of express, so let's do that first. So what we'll do is we'll say yarn add/d @type/express @type/node, right? A node.js or node, I don't know, I'm confused. It's node, I think. I just don't remember what was it. It was @type/node. Yeah, it's only node, I think. Yeah, it's only node, right? Yeah, okay. So then we will install the types of all these, both of them, right? And now we can actually do this. So we can go over here and we can say application, right? The next thing what we'll do is we'll just say app dot we'll be writing all the middlewares over here. So app.use cors, right now it will be universal. You can configure cause as per your liking, so you can give some origin and do all sorts of configuration which you wish to have in your application. Next thing what we'll do is we will do what? I'm pretty confused. Okay, so we'll use some other things as well, such as a JSON parser. Maybe if you are using a form, you can also use express URL. Right? You can use this if you're using form data, if you're submitting form data and stuff. Next thing what we'll have is we'll have a 404 route handler, right? A 404 route handler, right? So let's see how does that work. So to make a 404 route handler, what we'll do is app.all. So anything beyond this point, if the request reaches, that means this is an 404 route, right? So we have request and we have response, right? So what we'll say is we'll say response.send, the status is 404.send, right? So what is the data which we would like to send? We would like to send the route you are searching for does not exist on the server, right? And yeah, and the result will be false, right? So I mean, that means like whatever operation which I was actually trying to do failed. So if result is true, that means it's okay, everything is good. If result is false, that means no, the things are not good, right? So that's what it is. And next what we'll have is we'll have a error handler, right? So now you will ask like, okay, what is an error handler? Error handler is very simple. See, so if your app crashes at any point, right, like this error handler will be actually responsible for handling that. Error handler, this is the place where actually your error will be coming and you will be handling that. So how will you do it? How will you make an error handler? It's very easy. See, there is a default error handler which Express provides by itself, but the issue with that is like it's not very safe. Like it will show the path and all in the public. So you know, I tend to use my custom error handler almost every time, right? So you get error, then request, then response, and then next. So if you give all these four things, Express knows that this is a error handler, and basically, right? So if you see these errors are coming, right? So if you want to just make sure that they don't come, just give an underscore. That means that you're not using them inside that app, right? So that the linting error will not be appearing. So what we'll do is we'll just log the error out, first thing. Second thing is we'll say response.status again, response.status, right? And what is the status we'll be having? We'll be having 500, which is the internal server error status, right? And what we'll send is we'll send the result as false, right? Because our result was false in message. There was some internal server error. Now you can even like send the error with this as well. Will not be sending this for now, right? So you can send it if you wish, right? And I would suggest you to use a .env file, and then okay, we will be using indeed a .env file, so let's set it up that as well. So what we'll do is we'll add as a .env as a package, right? Now what you can do is you can have actually a .env file over here. So you can say .env, that's your environment variable file, and you can have like a thing called isDev, or like let's leave it. So you can have this over here, and then you can configure this. So we'll be using that in future, but we just added it right now. Okay, so we'll import .env from .env, and do this on the top of your page, right? It's important to do on the top of your page. .config, right? And then there you go. So that's the configuration which we did, right? The next thing what we'll do is we'll actually start the server now. So that's pretty much it. So we'll be starting the server right now. So start the server, right? So how will you do it? You will do app.listen on, let's say if you define some port in the .env file or the configuration of your server, so we'll fetch it from there. Otherwise it will be port 8080. So how do you do that? So it's very simple. So what we'll do is we'll say let port is equal to process.env.port if there's a port defined. Otherwise, if that is not the case, we'll be using 8080 as the port, right? So that's the port. And then what we can do is we can say app.listen on this particular port, and once you've started listening on this port, do what? Give me a callback function, right? So we pass a callback function which is executed when you actually start listening, right? So if once we start listening, I would like to log that server started listening on port and whatever the port in which you are. So basically I'm on this port, so I'll be just logging in that. So that's our basic, very basic express application. You can see that we do not have a route, any route over here. So I'll just write define routes over here, right? So like this is a very basic express application. In general world, you will be having lot more modules and a lot more folders, right? So I've just very like simplified this process because I just want to focus on Prisma a little bit more, and we are already up 11 minutes, so we'll have to be fast a little bit, right? So let's now continue with Prisma. How will you like to just set the Prisma up in your for your project? What you have to do is either you can install Prisma like globally. You can say npm install /g Prisma, and that will install Prisma, and you do not have to use npx during command, right? So you can directly do Prisma and all the commands, or you can use npx. I would recommend you to use npx because that gives you the latest version of Prisma every time, so that's pretty much cool. So we'll say npx Prisma, right? And then init, right? Init is actually a command. So once you do that, what will happen is it will set the Prisma up for your project, and it will, yeah, I will say yes. So it will set up the Prisma for your project, right? So once I do that, you will see that there are some prompts and there is a new folder created over here, which is Prisma, right? So this Prisma, let's see the content of the Prisma. This has two different things. First is a generator, right? And then a data source, right? So what is a generator? So we'll be learning about generators a little bit, like after we know about the data source. The first very important thing is to actually connect our very own server with the data source. Right now you can use MySQL, you can use any database which you wish. So what I'll do is I'll just start my MySQL workbench. Oh, sorry, not over here. I mean, come on, not okay. I'll just start my MySQL workbench, right? Just give me a second, right? So what you have to do is in your system there should be an instance of MySQL running, right? So just give me a second, right? Okay, so you can see like a lot of databases already made. I'll just create my new database and create database learn Prisma, right? So we'll call it create database learn Prisma and we'll execute it, right? So you can see this says green sign, and if you just refresh this, you can see learn Prisma over there. That's the database we'll be using for our own purpose. Now you should remember the password and everything of your database because that's very crucial. So what we'll do is over here you can see this gives this for Postgres, right? So we do not need, like, we are not using Postgres as a database. So how will you change this? You'll go to Prisma and you'll change this Postgres to MySQL because that's what we are using, right? You can change it to whatever database which you are using. It's very much okay, right? So yeah, we have defined MySQL over there, and that's like, this is the environment variable which we are using, which is database URL. As you can see, this is the database URL. We'll remove all these comments from the top, right? And it's fine, right? So this is the URL which we are using. So first of all, how will you define a MySQL URL? So I think this is pretty much the same. It's instead of this Postgres it will be MySQL, then instead of these it will be root, instead of this I think it will be root because for me locally I have username password both as a root, and then your DB name, right? So your DB name is learn Prisma, right? All right, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So now this would be able to actually connect with your database. So so if once we have done that, what we'll do is we will be start making our models. Now if you don't know what model is actually models are actually in Prisma, like you can define the structure of your table through models, right? So I'll give you an example over here. Let's say I'll have users in my collection, right? So I'll have first name, last name, all those stuff. How will you define this? So you'll call it model, right? And then you'll give a name for the model. So for example, in my case, I'll give user, right? and then you'll do something like this. So you have a user model, right? With this something, so error validating user, each model must have at least one unique criteria that has only, okay, so it is saying that you should at least have one like primary key or a unique criteria, right? So for us, what will be that is will be a user ID. So that will be of type number. So what we can do is we can just say, I think it's number, no, it's int, right? So that will be of type int. Just give me a second, right? I'll press a tab, and this will be an ID, right? And the default will be auto increment. So what is this? This means that this is like, this is the ID, this is the primary key, and it will auto increment every time. And if you're thinking about the formatting, oh, see, it's looking very bad. I know it's looking very bad. There's a trick to it, and we can actually make it look very good, but you'll have to wait for that, right? So that's very much required. The next thing is we have ID, we have then first name, we have the first name, and this is string, right? And this is what this is, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so then you have like, just remember that if you give a question mark, that means this could be null. If you don't give a question mark, that means if it is like required, you cannot ignore this, right? We have first name, then we have what we can have a last name, and let's give it like an optional, like you can give a last name and you can give a first name, and you can even like give like default. So you can say like default will be no last name, that means the last name was not given. For now I don't think so this is required, right? So this is like that. Then what we can have is, you can have email ID, right? So we can have string, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, and remember the email IDs are unique, right? So what you'll do is you'll give a unique keyword that will make this like unique. Now, like as I promised you that this will look good, so how will you make it look good? It's very much simple. So first of all, what we'll have to do is open terminal, and you'll have to run npx prisma, right? Format, I think it is format. Let's see. Yes, it is format indeed. So now you can see like this formatted this up, and now everything looks good, beautiful, like you, right? So it's great. So yeah, so we have the user model created. You can even create relations, right? So we'll be covering the relations a little bit later on, but let's first cover this very much basics, right? So we'll be covering on relations once we are very much comfortable with this, what we are doing. So then there's something called migrations, right? So if you are coming from a MongoDB environment, you might be confused that, oh, what the hell is this migrations? Come on. So migrations are pretty simple. These are like structural change in your database, right? Not change data wise, they are structural change, right? So let's say if you want to add a new column, or if you want to add something like that, right? So you'll have to write a migration which would like cover that, which will maintain the data integrity. If that sounded like very complex, what is data integrity? And I'll just make sense, right? So let's say you have your user table, right? So you have like your first name, last name, email ID, and suddenly you have a requirement to also store address of that user. How will you do it? So you will create a new address, but now the problem is, what about the address of all the other people which we were there, right? So you'll have to take a decision that whether you want that to be empty, or you want to populate, like let's say you have the address of those people. So all these are actually covered into a migration. You write a migration, and then that runs up every time you get a new instance of that database, right? So that migration creation is very easy. That becomes very easy if you're running like a Prisma. So we'll see how you can do it. Come on, I just want to open the terminal, right? Okay. So what you'll do is you'll say npx prisma, and then migrate, right? And then dev. Remember to give dev, because we are in a development environment. We are not in a production environment. So we'll give npx prisma migrate dev, right? And then it will, okay, can't reach database server. Okay. So the issue is it is just failing to reach my database. So I think the port is incorrect. So I'll just check it up. Just give me a second, right? So I think the port is incorrect. it's 3306, not 5432. So that's wrong. Let's fix it up. So it's 33, what was it? I just forget. Oh, 3306. 3306. Save it. So I actually had given wrong database URL. That's the reason this error appeared. Let's hope that this is fixed now. So I have given the correct database URL. Yeah, this is, I hope so, this is correct. Come on. Okay, now actually you have to give a name for your database. So let's say this is my first database. I'll just say init, that I have initiated the migration, right? Yeah, so as you have the green tick, that means the migration has been created as well as applied to your what do you say, to your database. So now I'll just show you how does this work. So you can see there is a new folder created over here, which is migrations, right? So if you go to that, you have your migrations. So in the end, you can see init, that's the migration which you created. If you go to that, there's migration, and you can see, actually you can see the real SQL which is actually executed. You do not have to write any of these things, right? Because writing SQL sucks. All of us know that, right? So you do not have to do that. All these are actually written and executed by Prisma itself. And if you now go to the database, right, I'll just show you in the database as well. So if you go to the database and if you go to learn Prisma, right, and if you go to the tables, you'll see that user table is there, right? There's the additional table which is Prisma migrations, which Prisma uses it for internal processing and stuff. But there's a user table. If I just like select that, you will see that this has 3 rows: ID, first name, last name, and email ID, which is exactly what we have created in the Prisma file, right? So once you are up and there with me in this, the next thing what we'll be doing is we will be consuming this data, we'll be writing and reading to this data. By the way, there is additional very good feature. Instead of accessing it through MySQL Workbench, there's something called Prisma Studio, right? So what you can do is you can say Prisma and then Studio, and this will enable you to actually access your data in much more nicer way. So you can see this gave me an URL, and this even launched that for me. So yeah, you can see this is like the user table, and you can see there's like particularly no right now there's no data over here, but you can basically access your data. That's pretty much, that's very great. So now what I'll do is I will go over here, right, and I'll define a route to create users, right? So I'll say app dot get request add slash create user, and there will be 2 things over here. First is the request, the next one is the response, right? And maybe the next one as well. So we'll have a next as well, right? So for the error handling and stuff, right? So we'll have a try catch block over here, and I haven't started the server yet. I know that, right? So we'll start it up, don't worry, right? We have set up the Prisma, we have the Express app ready, and things are looking good so far, right? So first thing what we'll do is we will be there's something called Prisma client, right? So which you have to actually use in order to manipulate or do anything with like Prisma using like this, like your routes and your route and stuff. So how would you do that? So first of all, what you will do is open your terminal over here, right? And then what you will do is you have to install there's something called @Prisma / client, right? So this is the library which is actually used for doing all those stuff. By the way, there is something very awesome about this library. I'll just show you, right? So let it be installed. Yeah, this is installed. As soon as it's installed, what I'll run a command called npx prisma generate, and this is the time to talk about that generate which was there in the Prisma schema Prisma file. Can you see this generate, right? So you must be thinking, okay, what is this? What is this provider Prisma client JS generator? Generators are like additional piece of code which is automatically generated as soon as you run a migration or as soon as you apply a migration, right? So what are all those additional piece of code? I'll just show you. If you go to node modules, right, and if you go to Prisma, not Prisma, wait, just give me a second. If you go to Prisma client, oh, this style, I'm lost. Where is Prisma client? Prisma. You can see Prisma and then client. You can see a lot of like additional things are generated, right? So all these, like there are some additional codes generated over here. I could not specifically pinpoint them because there are a lot of them, but that actually will give you like automatic code completion and stuff during, like, you'll see like that will, how that helps during like implementing it over here in Express. Like that makes your work a hell lot of easier as compared to like not having that, right? So that's pretty much awesome. So we'll see how does that work. So first of all, what we'll do is there's something called a Prisma client, which will be getting from Prisma client. I think it's called Prisma client. Yeah. So you import that, and then what you have to create is you have to create an instance of this. How will you do that? So let's say client is equal to new Prisma client, right? So what you do is you basically create an instance of this Prisma client, and now you can use this client object. So in normal Word, like in a bigger application, you would separate this out in a separate folder, and then you can like get a singleton instance and use it everywhere else. Like you can export that out and you can use it everywhere else, right? But here, as I'll be doing everything in this single page, I'm doing this like this way, right? So yeah, so we have this create user function, right? So now what you can do is you can say user is equal to, first of all, let's get our data up and running, right? So we'll say is equal to request.body, right? So what all things we'll be having in our body? So let's see, what do we require to create a user? We need the first name, last name, and the email ID. That's exactly what we'll be getting from the body. So first name, what am I doing? First name, last name, email ID, right? So we have all the three things which we need in order to create a user. By the way, I would not be doing any data validation, so I would highly recommend you to do it, because if you want to create a safe and sound application for your users, just validate the user, because it will be very easier to crash your server if you don't do so. I'm not doing this over here because I'm lazy, and I suppose you're not. So just do that in your case, right? Use a library called Joy or any other library of that sort of, just to validate the data, that the data actually exists, right? So now what we'll do is we'll just go to client and we'll say client dot and you can see user over here, right? That user is actually coming through the generator which actually run, right? So we'll go to this user, and then you can do anything about that user. So I actually want to create this, so I'll just select create, and then there's something called data over here, right? So you can just pass on the data which you want, right? So this is actually kind of concerning. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give the first name over here, we'll give the last name over here, and we'll give the email ID over here, right? So we have three different things, right? So yeah, and this is, remember, this is an async function. So first of all, what we'll do, like, this is a asynchronous code, so what you have to do is you have to use async await over here, right? Once you do that, you'll have your newly created user stored in this user field, right? So, and this, what we'll do is we'll just send it as a response over here, response.send, and we'll say that the message is user created successfully, right? And the user will be sending it over here, right? Next thing what we'll do is, next thing which is very important is, if we get an error, we'll simply say next.error, and this will go to the error handler, and error handler will be taking good care of our error, right? So that's pretty much great. So now it's the time to fire up our server, and let's see that everything works fine and everything works as we have intended this to work. So what we'll do is we'll go to our package.json file, and here what we'll do is we'll make a script section. Now this will have a dev script, like for running it in development, right? And for the development, what we'll do is we'll write nodemon, and then you can give src/index.ts, right? So nodemon, by the way, by default can run TypeScript file if you have ts node installed and TypeScript installed, so it can run that. So next thing is we'll have a build command, right? So we'll have like psc, right? And then what we can have a start command, which will be like node src/ now it will be build/index.js, because ultimately after being like build, our TypeScript will be converted to JavaScript, right? Now we also need a tsconfig file. So Ben Awards, I'm sure if you're watching this tutorial, you know Ben Awards, right? He has a very awesome channel about all these stuff. So he actually created an extension called tsconfig. So we'll be using that. So we'll say npx tsconfig.json. We'll hit enter, and yeah, it will ask like for what you want to make it. I want to make it for node, and you can see this will actually create a tsconfig.json file over here. Can you see? So output folder is dist. We'll be calling it build, and that's pretty much it. That will do the work, right? So yeah, there's some errors you can see. It says these errors are because we have created and we do not have the type definition for this. So npm is yarn add --d @type/course, right? And you can see this and we actually, okay, so now as we have given this tsconfig file, this is enforcing some of the rules over here. So we'll have to actually give the type. So this will be of type error, right? This will be, we are not using it, so it will be underscore, but this will be of type request, right? This will be of type response, right? And this will be of type next function. So, and this will be underscore. I think these things did not get imported. So we'll say response request, right? And now the things are fixed right now. So now you can see there's no error because we have successfully imported all these types from the express, right? So next thing what we'll do is we'll try to run this application. We'll see does this run or not. So I'll just open a new tab over here. Okay, we'll make this bigger, and then what we'll do is we'll give me a second, right? So we'll make it a little bit more bigger, right? So we'll run yarn dev, and we'll see does that successfully runs in a development server. So ts node index.js, okay, it says port 8080 is already in use. Okay, so port 8080 is already in use somewhere, I don't know, I'm not sure. So we'll change the port a little bit, so we'll call it port 8081, right? So it's port 8081 now, and let's see does that help us to start the server there. Yes, indeed, we started the server pretty successfully, right? So we have a server up and running, right? So now what we actually need to do is we need to test this create user, and for that I have a very I just forgot to mention you about some of the extensions which I have and which is helping me a lot. So one is the Prisma extension. So just install this extension if you want all these highlightings, right? You will not see it as beautiful as what I'm seeing if you don't have this extension installed. The next very important extension is called REST client. I think it is REST client. Yeah, this one. So now this would actually help us to test our API and make sure that it works as it should have been working, right? And we'll test it. How can we test like whether like this works as per our requirement? We'll create a file called http.rest, right? And now actually we can write all our http calls over here, right? So first of all, let's test out our create this function, like create a user function, right? So what we'll do is we'll just say a get request. Now what request it is it like a post request? No, it should be a post request, right? It should be not a get request because we actually are creating a user, right? So this will be a post request, and it would have like these three things, right? So we'll say a post request at http localhost port 8081 / create user, right? And then next what we'll do is we'll say content type is application JSON, right? And the next thing what we'll do is we'll define the body which we actually want to send. So we want to send first name, this is JSON, so it will be something like in double quote, first, or not like that, first name, let's say Jay, which is my name, and then last name, which is Prakash, which is also my name. sorry. And the next thing what we want to do is we want to give the email ID, which is test email @test.com, right? So we have the first name, last name, and the email ID, and we'll be sending this request right now. Let's see, does it like succeed or does it fail, or what happens with this, right? So we'll send the request right away. Okay, so you can see user created successfully. The user ID is 1, the name is this, the last name is this, and the email ID is this, right? So right, so let's actually go to this and let's refresh this, right? So you can see there is one user, which is Jay Pathak, and that's the email ID which is being used, right? So that's how you create data. Similarly, you can delete and do all sorts of things like that, right? So let's take another example, right? So we have created user. Now, for example, let's say you want to create a migration, right? Not migration, sorry. You want to create a like a linking sort of thing. What I can say. So users could actually have a profile, right? Where they can have bio, where they can have all the other stuff, right? So how would you create that, right? So are you getting my point? Like I'll just try to explain you what is the situation right now. We could create the user, we can do anything about the user, but now how to expand our application? Suddenly we have a need for like the profile page, right? Which is linked with the user, right? So how will you do that? So for that, you have to actually create a new migration, right? So how will you create a new migration? It's very, very simple, right? So we have the create user. By the way, I just want to give you a very simple hint. Just go through this user dot. There's a lot of functions, and it's very like pretty much self-explanatory. So I'm just going through the main concept, which will actually concern you. So you can see this is a delete, right? Where you can actually specify the condition. There's delete many, there's create many, which actually takes an array in the data, and you can save a lot of people at a single time. And there's an update as well. So you basically takes a condition and then what you actually want to update. All these things are pretty simple. The next thing is what we're going to cover is how you actually can expand your application. What is the next migration and how do you create it? So it's pretty simple. You go to a Prisma, you go to your schema.prisma file, and then you start modifying the stuff, right? So what I want next is I want a profile, right? Profile, right? So for the profile, what we'll have is every profile would have an ID, right? That will be its like what do you say? A primary ID or a profile ID, right? So we have a user ID and then we have a profile ID, right? We have int, and then this is also ID, this is also default, auto increment, right? And then oh, there's no comma, come on. And then what we have is we'll have a bio here, which is string, right? And this could be null, so it's completely fine if that is null or if that is not given. By the way, I just wanted to do one thing for this. I'll just do default as empty, right? So you can see all these changes which I'm making will be actually created to a migration and would be I'll just show you migration once it's generated, right? And then what we'll have is it will have like a foreign key, right? So through which we can actually link a lot of these things, right? So we'll have like a creator, right? Let's say creator, right? Creator will be actually an int, right? And yeah, and this will be required, right? And then what you can do is you can create like what I can say. I'll just show you, right? Rather than, so let's go to docs. All right, so we have the database connections done, database schema, right? So right now, if you see over here, this user relation, right? So that's called relation in reality. So you can specify a relation, so between a parent and a child. I'll just show you how does that work. So how does that work is basically is what we have a creator, right? So we have a creator. Just give me a second, right? Right. So now what we'll do is creator, and then we'll say user, right? And user will be of type user, right? So we have the user on the top, right? And then what you can do is you can just specify there's something called relation, right? And the first field is actually fields. So which field do you have a relation? So I have my creator is actually related to the to the ID of this user, right? So you can see this. I think there's some sort of issue with this. So just give me a second. I think this is below. What is the issue? It says error evaluating field user in the model profile. The relation field. Okay, the issue is actually you have to declare that this is actually this, like there's a relation, right? So what you have to do is you'll have to actually go over here and say profile, right? And then actually give like profile, right? And what is the issue? Error passing relation. The relation field profile on the model user is required. So this is not required, like it's completely fine if the user does not have a profile, right? So that's like optional, right? So it's not required, right? So now we'll be very quickly formatting this. Well, by the way, I'll go through my migrations, what I have written. Just give me 2 seconds while I format it. Okay, so I'll just run npx prisma migrate, sorry, format, right? So I have this formatted. I'll explain you how this is working. So basically what we say is like this will be strange for you. Why are we writing a profile over here? This says Prisma that this is actually related to another table which is profile, right? And this you have given question mark, that means it is not compulsory that it will be related. Like a user can have a profile, a user cannot have a profile. It's completely okay if it does not have a profile, right? Next thing is right, so remember that this will only have like these 4 fields, right? So the profile is no field over there, it's just for Prisma, right? Similarly, there is no field called user over here, just for Prisma to define the relation. So we say this is related to user, and our local field, which is creator, this creator which is inside the profile, is actually linked with the user ID. So nobody can give a creator ID. So this creator takes an ID which is not there in the user table, right? That's very much important. That will give a foreign key constraint failed error, something like that, right? So it is very compulsory to understand that. So once we have done this, what we can do is we can generate a migration now. So how will you do that? We'll just say npx generate. I'm just thinking, did you like, just comment down below, was I able to successfully explain how this was working? Relation. If yes, just say yes, I understood it. Otherwise, next time I'll improve my explanation. So npx generate dev, right? Sorry, we forgot to write Prisma, which is the main command. So npx Prisma generate dev, and we'll just hit enter. Again, this will ask for a name, right? So yeah, this did not ask for a name. I don't know why. Oh, that's so weird. Oh, we just, oh, this is not generate, right? So it's npx Prisma migrate dev, right? So it's migrate, not generate. Generate is like generator will be running and it will generate that additional code which helps us to autocomplete and stuff, right? So yeah, let's very quickly generate our migration, right? So let's name our migration. The migration is create profile, right? You can name it anything what you wish. I have named this create profile. You can name, oh, this is hidden. Wait, by the way, I'm running these commands over here. I don't know if you can see this or not. I'm sorry, was this visible before? It's this right? I'm sorry if that was not visible, right? So that actually generated a command. So what the command which I ran was npx Prisma migrate and then dev, right? So yeah, I'll just show you the command again. Sorry, I'm sorry. I wasn't like knowing that you can't see this. Okay, I'll just give you a recap. Just be with me, right? Now, yeah, it's done. I'll give you a recap of the commands. Don't worry, don't panic. I'll just do left over here. Yeah, that's fine. So now actually I can be down there. Yeah, I can be a little bit smaller. Okay, so now the command which I ran actually is np npx Prisma and just cut this, okay, npx Prisma, and then migrate dev, right? So that will generate a migration, right? That's what I did before as well as now. So both of the time I ran the same command. It is npx Prisma migrate dev, and for formatting it's a npx Prisma format. That's pretty much it, right? So yeah, so we are done with this. The next thing what we'll be doing is we'll be seeing the data. We'll be seeing the migrations. You can see all these migrations, right? So we change the user and we change the profile. So this is the new one, and you can see all the constraints which is there. So we have 2 migrations created pretty successfully. The next thing is you just can start using it. Very simple, right? So you can create a profile, so right? So I can say app.post create profile, right? And then what you can do is you can say, just give it like request, response, next, all these stuff, right? And you can say like again the same thing, try catch. If there's an error, I'll go to error, right? Otherwise I just want few stuff from request.body. Now what do I want is I want bio, which is this one, you know, and then the user ID, right? So which is the creator is also required, right? So we'll say creator and bio. Now these 2 things will be required by the user, right, to be given. Wait, why is this angry at me? This is all destructive elements are unused. Okay, will be used, don't worry, we'll be using it. So the next thing what we'll do is we'll say let profile, right, is equal to client dot profile dot create, right? And then you can specify data, and you can say like, okay, I want a creator and bio to be given, right? So once you do that, you have the new profile created. Now what you can do is you can send it as a response. So response dot send, the message could be profile created successfully, right? So you have profile created successfully, and the next thing is you can actually pass the profile which is created, right? And if there is an error, the error handler would handle it. So we have nodemon running, so that's the reason this automatically restarts our server every time we make a change, right? So it automatically restarted my server. The next thing what we'll do is we'll be testing it with the with this thing, right? So we can separate 2 requests through this like hash thing, right? Now we can give a new request over here. So we'll say